Hey guys, this is Buford with Scholarships for Soccer, and today we have a very special guest, Dave Fox, better known as the father of Jackson Fox, a soccer player with the University of Redlands. Dave, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, let's start out at the beginning of the recruiting process. When did you and Jackson decide to start the recruiting process?
Well, junior year, so it was an education for both him and myself about the whole process. So as Jackson sort of moved along in his soccer career and he became much more serious about it, I had to educate myself on the whole process. Because initially Jackson didn't want to go to college to play soccer. He wanted to try to do the pro path. And he got a look at an English club, and they actually asked him to compete for a roster spot. And after being there, he decided that's not what he wanted to do. So we had to start from ground zero, because it went from, all right, England, he wants to go to England. But when the opportunity presented itself, the thought of moving to England by himself at the age of 16, he just wasn't ready. So then we had to completely retool and go, okay, well, now we have to find out about all this college stuff. So it happened the summer of his junior year, where we really got into it in earnest, which is a little behind.
Okay. Now, what would you said, it was a big education. What would you say was your biggest misconception about the recruiting process before you started?
Well, initially everybody starts with what they know, right? And everybody locally, it's the University of Washington. So it's, you go to and I was a Pac-10 student, or Pac-12. So you start with that. You start sort of the highest level, and you kind of put your line out there and see what happens. And then we had to educate ourselves on the fact that there's a big difference. There's not just the University of Washington. There's all these other schools to consider also. So it's getting your mindset away from the big D1 program and understanding that may not work out for you, and then you have to do the research to find what does work for you. And it's a very, very, very wide, big pond when you start accessing Division I through all the different conferences, Division II, Division III, and so on and so forth. So the education was understanding that there was more to college soccer than the Washington, the UCLA, those kind of big schools that I was more familiar with.
Yeah.
So that was number one, is getting that process started, and then how to shift and understand where my son would fit into all of those opportunities.
Okay. Now, when you started, were you actively thinking in your mind, he's going to get, a big scholarship to play, or were you already educated enough to know that scholarships are very, very limited?
Well, we from the interest he got in England, we thought that there would be some opportunities for him here. And yes, part of that education is to understand that what scholarship means, and quickly understood that it's not about the scholarship you're chasing. For most kids, it's about a roster spot, and you have to fit into that roster spot from the perspective of the coach and the school and the athlete. There's a lot of things that go into play, and the financial assistance, whether it be athletic or merit, academic, became part of of my education as what we could afford. So even if, let's say, you want to go to the University of Washington, you're not going to get, as you know, you're not going to get a full ride, right? It's going to be a makeup of athletic and a merit, and there still might be a gap of money that's needed.
Sure.
So we had to start piecing all those puzzles together. But for us, with Jackson, it was more narrowing down the geographic area so that we could focus on something. Because again, there's 300 plus schools that run some sort of soccer program. So we had to sort of get him to focus geographically so we could kind of focus where he was going to put his time and energy into doing the research on those particular schools. Because there was a little bit of a hitch into this. There was a girlfriend. And so she is a college soccer player also. And so the plan had been that they were going to try to stay somewhat close. So it was East Coast initially. So we did a lot of looking in the East Coast. And then she got an offer on the West Coast. And then he got offers on the West Coast. And so the East Coast sort of fell away. So then we were able to finally focus in on something and start getting into those questions about the financial part of it.
Okay. And if I remember correctly, talking with Jackson, he did get multiple offers. How did you guide him? Did you pretty much leave the decision up to him, or did you try to guide him and say, well, this offer is better than that offer? How'd you guide him in that process, choosing between offers?
Well, we were fortunate in a few ways. Jackson had good grades, so he would get the max merit. So that opened those doors, right? We also had invested into a program here in the state of Washington that we invested in it very early when they were little guys, and that gave us a pool of money to use wherever you wanted to go. And it would give us a certain amount of money based on where the University of Washington's tuition was at. Anyway, so financially, we thought we had it pretty well underhand. It was more about what the fit was for him, because he had offers from, I think he ended up with 12, and they were scattered all over the country, all the way from a walk-on position with a top 5 team at the time. They offered him a walk-on spot, to a little D2 in West Virginia, to multiple school in Florida, to multiple schools in California. So it was then what was Jackson's priority, and thinking about it, it all came down to the school. And the school that offered him, who was a big school, he didn't necessarily like the school, meaning that it was a great opportunity, Division I, top 5 school at the time. He just didn't like the school. So it wasn't worth for him to go in there and try to struggle with the whole walk-on thing and try to, get a spot in the rotation. So that was quickly he just didn't want to go there. Some of the smaller schools back east, once the back east became less of a priority, he was still open to it. There were some very good schools that were interested in him until the very end. But then it all kind of switched to the school and the facilities, and the coach ended up being the determining factor. And another big factor, Buford, was he had reached recruiting burnout. He was just, the decisions going to all the different events, going to Disney and surf and this and everything, and all all the emails that were going out and all the coaches were coming to see him and all these things, he finally, I remember distinctly, it was after one of the games we had at Disney, and all these coaches were there to see him, and he didn't play well, and he just turned to me as we were walking off from the field, because I was part of the team. He just says, "I'm just done. I'm just over it. I'm going to take Redlands because I just want it to be over." And so that's a long way to answer your question, but it was, he liked Redlands. He was still seeing what was out there, but it came to a point where he was just so over the stress that
yes,
Redlands checked enough boxes. He was just like, "I'm fine. I'm going there." Right. So
yes. Okay. Now, from talking with a lot of college coaches, one of their big turnoffs is, if a parent comes in and starts talking money immediately. When is the point that in the process did you start talking money, and did you bring it up to the coach, or did you let the coach bring it up to you guys?
Well, we didn't start talking till money until Jackson wanted to accept with Redlands. And Redlands is in a very high academic liberal arts conference, which really translates into expensive.
Yes.
So when we found out how much this was going to cost, then it became very important to understand the finances. And Jackson had met with the assistant coach. The assistant coach had seen him play. They had ongoing dialogue. We met with the head coach. Jackson and I had dinner with him. And there wasn't a lot of money talk about then, but as we got closer, then the assistant and I had that conversation, because there's reality. This is a conference, and this is a conference where schools are anywhere from $70,000 to $80,000 a year.
Sure.
And the assistant coach is well aware that if they can't get past the financial hurdle, it's very, very unlikely that you're going to get the kid on campus. So once he wanted to go there, the assistant and I started having a very frank conversation. So Jackson had the grades, so he would make the max merit, but he wasn't a California resident, and they have a program down there for funds for California residents. So oftentimes a kid could have a little slightly less GPA and still qualify for money through that program. But that wasn't available to us. And then the school made some more money available. And then with the other resources we had, we were able to piece it all together and make it work. But I felt it was handled really well and just really pragmatically. It was like, this is what the costs are, and this is what it's going to cost you as a family to get him here. We had interest from multiple schools in that conference. So I had been able to go through and do sort of the online calculators based on that experience, and I was sort of ready for it at that point. So it's sort of educated on what we were going to be able to contribute. So it was an easier conversation when we finally got to the point with the coach where it was, okay, if you accept, this is what it was. So in the final process, what I had to finally say to Jackson and to the coach was, if Jackson had to apply, and he had to go through the application process and get back the financial package that they were going to put together before he finally signed, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So we didn't really see what it was. He wanted to go there. They wanted him. But then it was up to the administration to accept him and to provide the financial package, which the coaches have input, but finally it really comes down to the administrator. So once we got that back, we were able to finally say officially yes. So there was a multi-process thing, from the kids saying yes to now us coming to a meeting of minds on the financial part of it. And I would highly recommend that everybody keep their options open somewhat until you get that final piece back.
Sure. Okay. Now, final question. If there's one thing that, looking back now, if there's one thing that you wish you had done differently, what would it be?
Differently. Well, I think we had a very difficult process because the geography changed, right? From England to East Coast to West Coast. So it was a lot of chasing of balls, right? Where maybe, being educated about this earlier on in the process would have been a big help. But I'll tell you one thing I think that we did right is that as a parent, you have to help your kid through this process. There are a lot of parents say, if he really wants it, he's going to do it. But I think that's a lot to put on a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, even a 17-year-old.
Yes.
So you have to help them and organize them and kind of come to it with some shared responsibilities to be able to get through the process. I remember very specifically Jackson having to come back from an event, go into school because he had to get some of his academics caught up. And then there was another event coming, and there was just no way he was going to get the emails out in time. So he and I sat down, he wrote the email, and I helped him copy and paste and get them out. And then he sort of picked it up when he could. But without our assistance, the family assistance, it would have been much harder to finally find that place that really fit him if we hadn't kind of guided him along the way. And the last thing I'll say is, in my experience with being part of Patty Doris as the president and having involved with the recruiting of a lot of the kids, there are a lot of opportunities out there for kids. I get contacted all the time that roster spots are open. But the reality is it's not places the kids necessarily want to play. So if you really want to play college soccer, it is out there. You can absolutely go do it. I fully believe that. But the difference is it may not be where you want to go. And so you better have the soccer choices and the non-soccer choices just in case they don't overlap. And that's where I see a lot of kids throw all of their time and energy into these certain schools for soccer, but don't have the non-soccer backup. And then now at this point of the year, they scramble. And so it's not advisable.
All right. Well, Dave, you dropped a lot of knowledge, and we certainly thank you. And good luck. And tell Jackson I said hello, and I look forward to hearing big things from him. And thanks again for giving us so much knowledge. We certainly appreciate it.
Sure. Anytime.
All right. Thanks, Dave.